You guys, what's good? So we're back with another video. We got Ivy here today. He's gonna drop some knowledge on us, but before he drops some knowledge, he's gonna drop some introduction about himself, like what's he about, and if you guys haven't followed him on Instagram and stuff, even just watching his stories, you might just be like, yo, damn, this guy, he's mad knowledgeable, and he has like sometimes it might be like contradicting to some of the thoughts you might have. You'd be like, oh shit, this guy's like. That's the whole point of perspective, right? He's just giving a different perspective because everyone's so like into our own thought processes. This is the way things are, and they're not, right? There's more to things. So he's all about that, and it's awesome to see, right? That's why I wanted to sit down and talk about some different things today. But introduce yourself, right? What's your about and stuff?
So, most of you don't know, my name is Marinder. A lot of people call me Ivy because Perspect Ivy, I guess. So it's Perspective. I'm the founder of Perspective. What else is there? I don't know. I like to show people that there's more to health and fitness and health are two different things. So I want to change the perspective to the fitness people that we can train in a healthy manner and still gain some of the things that you want to gain through the regular exercise that we are currently doing, and show them that there's more benefits to training in a certain way. And the perspective that I provide is what are the universal laws in terms of like where does the world connect in different ways. Like you'll see the same patterns within movement that you see in space, that you see in cells, that you see everywhere in life psychology, and just trying to understand things deeper. I think trying to like analyze everything is my idea with what training should be and what exercise should be and what health should be.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what we see, right? If you do follow him, or if you don't know, like he goes deep into things and he thinks about things. He just isn't like, oh, I see this sick video. Okay, this is the way things are. This is how you do a deadlift. Someone does like a bird dog for the deadlift movement to improve their lower back. That's how you do. That's all you do, or something like that. Right? So like, there's different parts to everything, and that's kind of like the topic I want to talk about today. Is like training for, I guess you mentioned like health, functionality, versus aesthetics or like bodybuilding. Because I guess like the way I train is more like repetitive movements, and you just kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger. But is that really healthy? So that's kind of what I want to ask him. And how can I integrate some of the health movements or functionality movements into my style of training? And hopefully that can help you guys out too, right? So before we go into all that, what is functionality? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. So a lot of people think that bench pressing, squats, deadlifts are functional movements, right? Don't get me wrong, they could be functional to an extent, but the way that I like to think about functionality is break it down into a hierarchy of movements. What movements are we doing the most throughout the day? So what is it that you do the most of? Is it breathing? Probably, right? So if your breath work is not on point, you're probably going to be anxious, you might be depressed. Again, could be one of those reasons that you are. There might be other factors to it as well. That's why we focus on the entire picture rather than just one. But again, if you're not breathing properly, your muscles could be tight, you're not providing proper oxygen, you're not getting rid of toxins properly, because again, when you breathe out, you get rid of toxins, right? You're just not doing things properly. So if your breath is not working the way that it should, your core is not tight, your spine's probably not holding the right position, that's the first part of functionality. The second part, that's one of the parts, right? Functionality is a massive spectrum of things, but on this end of the priority list would be breathing. Right after breathing, what do we do the next most of? It's walking. You take about like 10,000 steps a day, especially if you're trying to be active, you're trying to get those 10,000 steps, right? That's a functional movement. Now, what do you require to do when you're walking, right? What are the muscles that engage? Where is the fascia transmitting force? Fascia is like the muscle, what surrounds the muscles and how it connects between muscles and transmits force from one muscle to the next. In what's going on where kind of thing, right? And then when we think about walking, we also can think about running, we can think about throwing, because they use similar training patterns and movement patterns. And spirals, a lot of spiral lines, a lot of rotational work. Again, when we talk about the universal laws, right? This is where that stuff comes in, where you're rotating, you're moving a lot in that way. And then on top of that, right, after that comes, can you bend over properly and grab something? If you can walk with the proper movement pattern, I guarantee that you'll be able to bend over and grab something off the floor, no problem. Right? Hold spinal positioning, knowing where you are in space, proprioception gets better, neuroplasticity, again, decompression, you're not compressing your nerves as much, right? You have your mind in between each spinal column, right? Like each vertebrae, you have a nerve going, innervating something, right? So now, if any of them are compressed, you have a digestive problem, you probably might have your spine out of line. You know, a lot of people be like, oh, like I have like leaky gut and stuff. They can also be associated with like your spine, the way that you know breath, the way that you're using decompressed. So
what's like a common thing you see when people are not walking correctly? Or
in terms of their movement pattern?
Yeah, like what's something you see?
A lot of people on their heels, a lot of people on their back.
They're walking on their heels?
Not walking on their heels, but their weight, their distribution of weight is a little bit further back, and that usually keeps them in their lower back a lot. You'll usually notice people that lift weights will tend to have that because the common cue is someone has knee pain. Oh, you know what? Drive through your heels.
Yeah,
right? You drive through your heels.
Yeah, keep your heels down.
Exactly. You hear drive through your heels a lot, right?
Okay.
But again, if we're forward creatures that like to move forward, right? Why are we trying to go back, right? It doesn't make sense because you would never see yourself in any movement drive through your heels. Right? It doesn't make sense.
Interesting.
Right? You take the distribution of weight from the back of your foot towards the front of your foot.
That makes a lot of sense. I've recently been like implementing that in my squats. Is like I use like a tripod foot almost. Like, use the front of the foot and the back of the foot. Not just push through one. It's been actually helping my squat a lot.
And I've been doing a lot of toe squats with people. So they're learning. I don't know if you see that in my stories. I'm learning a lot of instead of doing back squats. I don't do any back squats anymore. Right. I do a lot of
moving forward
kind of squats.
So breathing, walking.
Running, throwing, jumping.
So those are normal. Oh, so that's what I mean by functionality. Like you should be able to, like, not hurt your back when you just like pick up something from the ground, right? Like you throw something.
And I think people confuse that with like a deadlift, right? But the thing with a deadlift is you're adding a lot of compression because when you deadlift, if you just watch the person just in their setup, right? When they do this shoulders back and down, and then you pull the slack out of the bar, right? You'll notice right in the thoracolumbar junction, so right where your T-spine meets your lumbar spine, you'll notice they try to lift their chest up, and all that weight is right there. So you're adding a lot of compressive forces.
So that's like bottom movement.
Yeah, right when you pull the slack out, right? It's gonna happen right around that area, right? You know what I mean? You try to, and I used to find that like, oh, why is that area so tight for me? I don't know. Like right in like your mid back, lower back area, right? And it would always be so tight. It's like since I started trying to understand it, because it doesn't make sense. You're lifting weights. I've never had like a lot of pain before I started lifting weights. You know what I mean? Before then, and then this is like maybe like knee pain, like a little bit here and there, right? Because I never learned to move properly. But until I started lifting weights, I never had pain, right? And then like it's too much, right? It's too much repetitive movements. A lot of like your elbows are bothering your shoulders, your back.
So knowing all this, I get this. I see what your point is, and like everyone's like, oh shit, that's the perspective, right? But like people are like, okay, that's cool, but I still want to deadlift, bench, and squat, and do bicep curls 4 times a week, right? So they're still gonna do it. You know that too, right? All the knowledge you can put into their heads, they're still gonna do it because they're just oblivious or whatever it is. Even I am. I just want to get big, right? That's what it is, and I can't change that. I can probably change it. Oh, you know what I mean, right? So how can I integrate some of these functionality things into that kind of training if I possibly can? Can I do it?
So the first thing I would break it down is I would try to understand the psychology behind why you do what you do, right? Because
I don't know. Some of it is because ego. I just want to get. I want to look sexy for this. I'm not gonna lie.
That's true, man. And a lot of people won't admit that, right? So it's like a lot of people are afraid to admit what they're doing for. I'm the skinniest I've ever been in my life right now, right? I'm like last time you see me I was probably like 170, 175, right? I'm like 155 right now. I was 157 yesterday, right? So it's like I'm light. I'm gonna gain weight back, so this is what I'm doing. My next journey is gonna be showing people that you can maintain this and reach a certain physique level, right? Like last time I worked out, like, my physique was still, was still there, right? But because I was still doing those movements, right? Recently, I kind of just I gave up, right? Like especially like since started. Yeah, exactly. Right? So now I have to make my way back. And like, don't get me wrong, I will still probably do some sets of some bicep curls, still some chest press, still some rows. What's going to change is how I'm doing it, right? The other thing that's going to change is how much of it I'm doing. Think about how many times you bench press in a week
For sure.
a lot of stress on your joints,
Stress,
right?
yeah.
Especially in the same repetitive motion.
For sure.
So
Okay, psychology.
yeah, so what I
was kidding, by the way. It's more just like I love bodybuilding. It's like
yeah. It's
I
become the passion.
gained a lot of confidence and stuff, and like
It-
changed my perspective.
Yeah.
I got discipline, patience, work ethic.
No,
Changed the game for me, right? So
It's definitely, it becomes a passion at one point,
For sure,
right?
yeah.
Like you've competed before.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are going to compete.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's why I question, like sometimes it's like, what are you doing for, right?
100%.
If you're competitive, you plan on going possibly competitive, right?
Yeah.
That's what you need to do,
100%.
right? But for everybody else, like maybe you should figure out where's my balance between.
Yeah. It's
right?
how can you treat that?
Yeah, right. So for me, I found that you might need to get honestly for the longest time I was trying to integrate the two and do a mix, right? But I felt better,
Yeah.
but not that great stuff,
Okay.
right? And then when you give it up and you try to what my clients do now, right? They don't do it the first 4 to 5, 6 sessions are a lot of awareness of what's going on, right? A lot of building the foundations, right? Before I used to build the foundation too, but a little bit different in different ways. Right now it's more of what's supposed to go where, right? What's stacking on top of what's holding how much force and all that. So what I can't give is one cue, right? A lot of people message me, oh, what's a cue to fix my this? And I'm like, here, you can try this, but we can't guarantee that's what I'm going to fix, right?
Yeah. Everyone's different too.
Yeah, and you need that long-term fix. I kind of disagree with that. Everyone's different a little bit.
Oh,
We have at the end of the day, the anatomy is still the same. Someone's structure might be a little different,
Yeah.
right? You might have a longer femur,
Yeah.
but we all have the same moves. We only have so much variability. Yeah, there's variability, but we only have so much. At the end of the day, you're a human, I'm a human.
Yeah.
Right? We're not a different kind of human.
Okay.
I might have a wider rib structure, you might have a wider rib structure.
Yeah.
So the movement might look a bit different,
Yeah.
but the pattern is still the same.
Okay, so that makes things easier. So then how can we?
Yeah.
Right? It technically does make it easier.
It does make it a lot easier,
Yeah.
right? That's why, again, incorporating a lot of spinal awareness breath work is really important, right? Making sure your hips and your core is your strongest, structures, right? So your core wants to be really strong, your hips want to be very mobile, right? A lot of people will try to do T-spine and hip mobility. It's not going to work until this is strong, right? If I'm
What's
trying to
T-spine?
like upper back
Oh,
or
okay.
rotations,
Okay.
right? A lot of people try to do that, but that's not going to work until this is stable, right? Because this needs to be in the right spot. Your hip needs to be in the right spot.
Yeah.
For this to get tight, this can start moving after. If this doesn't get tight, right? If I try to move my hip, my lower back doesn't come with it.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But if this is tight and I try to move my leg is the only thing moving because now I'm aware of how the proprioception and has a stability, right?
Okay.
So the first thing that I would start with is doing the right kind of core training. So your core training should be similar to your breath training. So when you're blowing out hard and you're trying to learn how to teach your core to be strong, right? You're no longer going to be needing to do the crunches where you press your back on the floor. Another cue that I hate, I hear people all the time, press your back to the floor when you're doing any kind of back.
I say that's
abs.
not
You want to know why that's not right? It's because look, we have a natural curvature of our spine, right? Your lumbar spine has an arc, right? Yeah, some people have excessive arcs, but you can't just get rid of the arc just because you know what I mean. If something is bent one way, you don't want to just bend it the other way. You want to find that middle ground, right? And teach it how to stabilize in the middle ground.
Yeah.
Right? Your lower back is not meant for a lot of movement. Again, if you look at the structure of the lower back, there's thick pieces of vertebrae, right? Versus the T-spine are thinner, where they can move. They have a lot of. If you can hold a spine, like a made-up spine, right? One of the fake ones, you'll see the T-spine moves.
T-spine on the top.
The middle, right? And we have the cervical, which is also meant for stability, right? The mid back will move, and the lower back is stable, right? But the lower back, it needs to be stable. The problem is we lose that stability by trying to press it back or overarching, right? You'll notice someone that sits like this, right? They're more likely to go out and any kind of movement. They're gonna do this when they go grab, but then their chest and then they're gonna hyperextend. Right? You're hypermobile through your lower back. We want stability in our lower back, and then our hips and our T-spine. So right below and right above, you want that proper mobility, right? You want to be able to move correctly.
Okay. What would you do for stability in that lower back? What kind of things can you do?
A lot of just laying on the floor, right? First, I call it resetting your pelvis, right? Yeah, you reset your pelvis, right? You get your hips in the right spot. You blow hard. After you create that natural arc in your back, you blow hard to try and get that core activated. That's the stuff that I would do. and then it would start on the floor, then it would go to like a bench seated position, then it goes into more of a standing position, and then I like to do a lot of single arm. You've probably seen this on my story too. It's a like an anterior oblique sling kind of press, right? So you incorporate that entire side, and you try to hold what you learned on the floor. You incorporate that standing, right? And then you do that in a rowing position, probably like a kneeling or a standing row. Opposite posterior oblique sling, so opposite leg, opposite arm. Right, are engaged, your opposite glute and your opposite lat, right, so they connect on your back.
Because I know like the most common exercise I see, and I actually done it recently, is like the dead bug or like the curl up. Have you heard of the McGill Big Three?
Yeah.
So like curl up, side plank, bird down, like that kind of stuff. Stabilize your core, stabilize that, spine or whatever, so you can do better deadlift, squats, that kind of thing. Does that stuff?
Yes and no.
It's better than nothing.
Better than
the first
nothing.
point.
I think it is a short-term fix to a long-term
Short-term
fix.
fix.
Don't get me wrong, they're great to build that stability.
Yeah.
But again, I see a lot of people like arcing their lower back and trying to do like all crazy things, right? If you do it properly, yeah, it's definitely great.
Okay.
When you do a dead bug and you tell someone to press their back on the floor, it's probably not the right way to do it. Right?
Okay.
And if you notice that their stomach is getting big, I notice that a lot. A lot of people will be doing it and their stomach is getting bigger. That means now you're not even pressing your lower back, now you're hyperextending, because now your back is contracting, your stomach is getting bigger, right? So you want to always watch for, is the stomach small in movements? When you do a deadlift or a bend over row, you probably notice that your stomach gets bigger at the bottom. Or you're gonna squat.
Raising your core, or no?
See, you're actually losing it, right? Again, this is where the misconceptions, again, my opinion of misconceptions come in. Because if you aren't able to hold a tight structure, right, you're opening and you're in whatever you want, right? If you really keep this tight, right, you're gonna hold the right tension everywhere. And it's not, when you breathe in, I just don't think that's holding the right kind of abdominal pressure. That's what I used to do as well. So I used to do the same thing. When I squat deadlift, I would always big breath into your stomach and hold tight, right? I do the opposite now. I blow out and then I go down. I don't even do squats and deadlifts like that anymore. But
because right now how I do it, like exactly what you said, I breathe in. And I breathe into my lower back and in my stomach, and I hold that position until I'm done, then I breathe out. Interesting. I feel like I can exert more power like that.
Yeah, that's the thing though. Like, if you're gonna be under 350 pounds, don't expect this to be the right thing to do. To do right away. You know what I mean? You really need to build this up for a long time to be able to do it right. Again, you spent 25, 30 years doing this to your body. You probably wanna, if you wanna do that stuff, there's no way that you're gonna be able to go jump right into it. Right? You need to find the right way to do it.
Interesting. Yeah, bro. Like that's the thing, right? Like I always say this. I understand some of the things that you do are technically not healthy, even just like the way I eat nowadays to bulk up. Like I've been having something like 450, 500 grams of carbs, right? That's insane. Like I even know the science behind it, right? Like spiking my insulin like every 2 hours. So like that's obviously not the most healthiest, but I always like to put it this way. Like there's this analogy this doctor is like, some research study shows that if you jog for an hour every day, you're basically adding like 5 years to your lifespan. And whatever lifespan is, but he's like, I fucking hate jogging. So he's like, I'm gonna enjoy those 5 years right now, then those last 5 years, right? So it's like, that's the same, I guess like, how you wanna move when you're older, that's what the thing you're kind of preaching to if you wanna move forever properly.
Yes and no. Again, I'm also like, how are you living right now? What is your diet? Again, think about it this way, right? Like, you think waking up tired is fun? You know what I mean? Like, you might, like, you think waking up with shoulder pain is fun, right? But like, it's not, I know what it feels like. You're sleeping on your shoulder, you wake up, you're like, I shouldn't have done that, I should have slept on my shoulder. Like, you're lifting and what if we build up the proper foundation for 6 months to a year, and then we put you into starting to bench press and do those things again. We first build the foundation, right? We might need to take a big step back. Once we do it, maybe we can start incorporating those things again eventually, right? It's just some people, again, we're in this culture that loves instant gratification through a lot of things, right? A lot of things, drugs, money, whatever it is, right? Those things kind of teach us in today, like what you're doing in everyday life, to also reach for that instant gratification. I want to get jacked now. I want to lose weight now. What about 5 months from now? What if you know what I mean? What if we really built the right foundation, right? And I think that's the thing. The biggest thing with the clients that I get are really willing to like optimize their health. If that makes sense, do it in the most optimal way.
That's the key word, right? Willingness. my foundations
Yeah.
up to actually optimize the movements, right?
Yeah.
And like I've been actually going through the process where like I'm not trying to lift heavy, more like not really eccentric training, but like slowing down my movements and focusing on breathing. We did a video on breathing too, like nasal breathing, which is mouth breathing. I put one cake in my mouth and sleeping, bro.
Some people do that.
Right? So like it's been actually, I feel way more calmer, and like I'm just like I'm not breathing as hard when I do anything. You know, like in general, like I still always have my mouth open and stuff. Like so that's a good starting point for me, but
And I think for me, meditation has helped me with learning more about, okay, wait, my breath is going to stay in that area, right? And actually trying to understand the nasal breathing, because again, it does release more nitric oxide. It is, you know what I mean? Again, breathing is one of the most important things for you.
Yeah.
So understanding how to optimize your breath is something that you need to understand.
For sure. Yeah. So like going from there, like obviously you would not prefer, but you would say like it's not recommended. Fuck these words, man. Like 6 to 12 months building up a foundation. Then getting into getting jack training maybe. That might be a better, like optimal way or like a better efficient way to in the long run. Like
if you're an average person, right, and your goal is not to compete on stage, right, you can put on muscle and still look good if you do it in the right way. I have clients, again, in 3 months they still put on 5 to 15 pounds, you know, guys, right? We're talking about guys.
Yeah.
Girls probably more around the 5 range, guys more around the 10, 15 range, right? In 2 to 3 months. And that reminds me of similar numbers that you would achieve when you're bodybuilding, right? In the first, if you're a beginner, that's usually the numbers that you do achieve, right? That's probably what I achieved. And I'm talking about hard gainers, right? I'm not talking about like someone that wants to lose weight. Because for them, I'm not even measuring so much about how much muscle you're gaining. We're trying to achieve a balance of weight loss and, you know, like posture and all that stuff. So those hard gainers, if they're able to put that muscle on, it might not look the same way, or you know what I mean, it might not be in the same places that you would want in terms of like
to get that lean
look, that's
aesthetic look,
right? But it's still a very aesthetic look, because the reason that we're attracted to this V taper is because a healthy male looks like that, a healthy female looks like that, right? That wide hip structure, wide shoulders, thin waist. The reason that's attractive is because that is a functional movement-based posture. Right? So if you can achieve that, right, you might not be as muscular in, you know, like your upper chest exactly, right? Or like your rear delta exactly, right? Because when we bodybuild, I went through these phases too, right? You want to make sure, my rear delta's lacking, I want to make sure my rear delta is perfectly, it has to be
round shoulder.
I need another 1 centimeter on my rear, you know what I mean? Like you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, wow, I want that, right?
For sure.
It might not be exactly that, but they still look good, you know? The aesthetics are still there.
And they feel good.
They feel really
That's what
good.
they really say.
Exactly.
Okay, like honestly, my main thing was like, I know I probably won't stop bodybuilding or like lifting the way I lift for a really long time, just because this has done a lot for me, right? Both like mentally and physically. But like, you know, I wanted to learn how can I integrate some functionality into my daily stuff, right? So like I've been doing more, like I've been going more walks. During COVID, like I was doing like some sort of meditation. At least I call it meditation, but I don't know if it was. You know,
Meditation is a lot of things.
and like I've been focusing on my breathing. So like those are some ways that I've been trying to integrate some functionality into my daily. And like I've been doing more core stuff. But I guess core can go a lot of directions, like you mentioned. People usually like moving and not even really stabilizing and going back, stuff like that. But so what are some other practical things that you would like to add on to that? We can end off there. I think we added a lot today.
It would just simply be incorporating more stuff on the floor for your core stuff, or lengthening your posterior chain. Again, not for everybody, but for most people that have those issues.
It's a good starting point.
Finding somebody that can assess you, that's really important. I think people forget, like I myself for the longest time, I didn't pay for courses, I would just search stuff on YouTube. But I don't know the information I'm getting. I don't know if I'm getting the whole picture. Stop listening to 1 cue fixes. Shoulders down and back is not a fix. Your shoulders aren't meant to be down and back. That's what, again, I hate, there's cues, I just hate cues, right? Not that I don't give cues to my clients, I just hate those certain cues that are like, okay, that's your now fix. This is not a position for your body. Try it, watch what happens in the mirror, watch your head. You're probably going to have forward head as you try to put your shoulders down and back. You're probably going to have hyperextension in your lower back. Your rib cage is probably going to flare, right? 1 cue fix is not the thing. Your shoulder blades have a lot of mobility in them, right? Stop listening to 1 cue fixes. Start understanding just the basic anatomy and what everything is meant to do. What are your shoulder blades meant to do? What's your elbow meant to do? Right? It's pretty simple, right? We have a lot of movement in our wrist. We have only this here with a little bit of supination. and stuff, right?
For
Your
sure.
shoulder has a lot of range of motion, right?
Yeah.
If you lock your shoulder down and back, I don't have so much range of motion. So does it make sense to lock my shoulder down and back?
Yeah.
Probably not. If I throw a punch, my shoulder reaches all the way,
Yeah.
right? I've noticed what my shoulders have loosened up a lot. And since I started opening up my shoulders,
Yeah.
right, especially shoulder blades, I got a lot better, right? If you're bench pressing 215, right, shoulders down and back is probably the way to go, just saying.
For sure, yeah.
Because
Depends what you're training for, though. Right? You're
Exactly.
saying for average person, you know, like.
because you don't want to be in this position for an average person. It's not a good position to be in. You want to be in a position where you can move really well,
Yeah.
right? And that means neutral shoulders, not protracted, not retracted, not elevated, not depressed, in the middle, right? Somewhere where you can move from. You need a good relationship with the rib cage and shoulder blade. You know, the rhythm has to be great. And there's a lot of like,
Yeah,
not-
there's too many things.
my way of saying it is always there's not one thing that I can tell you, but I can show you how to do it, right? Like, okay, if this is what your body looks like, this is what it feels like. When you understand what it feels like, it becomes subconscious and you can hold it over time. Exactly what I was telling my client that was walking out on the way. He was like, oh, what can I do when I'm, doing this activity? I'm like, eventually it's going to become subconscious. Just give it some time, right?
That's- yeah.
You're going to get it over time, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like, I heard an analogy the other day. A person was talking, some podcast, I forget who it was, but like, it's giving the concept that when we were young, we don't want to brush our teeth.
Mhm.
Our parents keep telling us to brush your teeth, and now we don't even think about it. We get up in the morning and brush our teeth, right? Subconscious, like you're saying. So it's like you need that external push from the start, like assessment, and over time it becomes internal,
Yeah.
like you mentioned. So yeah, that's fucking real. Like, I like that. Now, 100%. So like, my main thing with this was like, I know most of us, or not most of us, but a lot of us still like the traditional way of lifting. Just bodybuilding, that kind of stuff, and nothing wrong with that. But just being aware of there's different things out there, and just understanding that you can integrate some of these things for your daily lives, and just start questioning shit, right? Like, why are you trying to get jacked? Like, just yeah.
And also, one thing to add on to it, the traditional way of lifting, and when you start thinking deeper, you probably didn't find it, it found you. Because you went to the gym and that's all you've seen. You had no other options. All you've seen is bench presses, squats, deadlifts, because, again, we're stuck with that. I want to look good, right? The superficial, right? So sometimes some of us get too stuck up in that superficial,
Yeah.
and that's all you know.
Yeah.
So if you're not shown other options, right, you don't know if you like something. A lot of people that I speak to about this, they're like, yeah, this looks stupid, right? Why are you doing bunny hops? I remember being in the gym one time and I looked back and some guy was laughing at me, And I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? This guy's a loser. I really don't care, right?
Yeah.
It didn't bother me so much, but in my head, I'm like, wow, like people are really that, not open-minded.
Yeah, closed-minded.
You haven't even tried it, right? You don't know how it makes your body feel, right? It might look different, but what's wrong with looking different, right? If I dress different than you, right? Are you somebody to judge me for dressing different?
Yeah.
Right? That's a you problem, not a me problem.
100%.
Right?
Like technically, like at one point or another, like this traditional lifting was looking different to other people too.
Exactly.
Right? So yeah, 100% agree. Like be open-minded. You never know what might work for you, right? Like you might have been having trouble lifting the traditional way, or like lifting, every day everything's hurting. So maybe this type of training might feel way better.
And some people might have crazy genetics,
Yeah.
right? Where their core and their posture, because maybe they grew up doing martial arts and they have crazy strength.
Yeah.
And they're bench pressing, squatting, deadlifting, no problem,
Yeah.
right? But majority of people won't have that. There will be certain people, and I see certain people that I seen this one girl on Instagram, and she's freaking killing it. Her form is amazing. Her squats, she's getting deep while maintaining integrity everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure she's not in pain. Okay, maybe she is, right? But based on how her form, she can still run amazing while lifting like that.
Yeah.
That's just some people are just maybe I don't know what she did growing up.
Yeah,
I don't know what
for
maybe
sure.
her ancestors did.
So many factors.
But there was something that made her able to hold that.
Yeah.
Right? It's again, the movement is not different.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone is different in a sense in terms of her body was different growing up or maybe something like that.
That's not factors.
But the movement is still the same, the patterns are still the same, right?
100%.
But yeah, that's all I got.
Nah, it's good, man. That's a lot of knowledge, right? Like, so that's a lot to take in, a lot of perspective to take in. If you guys didn't know, but like, it's just something to know, right? Something to think about. Let's start integrating some things slowly, right? Like something you've been building up for years, for your a lifestyle you've been living for years. Nothing's gonna change in a couple of weeks or months, right? So start working on it. Start working on some breathing. Start off with you mentioned. Start going on more walks and see how you walk. Different things like that. Start working on core, hip. So again, just reach out, man. Like we're here. Like that's all we're doing. We're trying to make an impact, trying to help people, right? So if I don't know shit, I'll forward it to him. You know stuff, you know he'll help you out. So that's what we're here for. And we got anything to end off? Good.
Yeah, man. Just what I would suggest is be more aware of everything.
Yeah.
Yourself, how you feel, and everything around you, how you interact, your social media content, everything.
Yeah.
Just be more aware of life.
100%. Okay. That's it, guys. Bye bye. That's it, bro.